comes easy. Don't you stop until your battle's won. Never throw in the towel, 'cause you just begun. You can have anything you want, but it won't come easy. Ooh, sometimes life just don't go according to your plan. Ain't much you can do, but just do what you can. When you give it your all and you don't understand, just remember what my mama said. Never give up, never give up on love. Never give up, never give up, no. Never give up, never give up on love. Never give up, never give up.
So she's mentored by Quincy Jones, Quincy Delight Jones, and Stevie Wonder. She's Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Sheléa. She joins us live in studio to talk about her new Aretha Franklin-inspired song, Never Give Up on Love. You hear the Aretha Franklin inspiration? I hear it. We'll talk to Sheléa live in studio at the top of our third hour. On the B side of hour 3, an update on the civil war in Sudan and other humanitarian hotspots with David Miliband, president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee. But we commence today's show in conversation with noted civil rights attorney and president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, Maya Wiley. Maya, good to have you on the program. How are you today?
It's wonderful to be with you, Tavis, and I'm well. Thank you.
It's my great honor to have you. You are part of a grand legacy at Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. I have tracked this organization for decades now, started with my dear friend Wade Henderson. And what an honor. They're blessed, I should say. What an honor it is to have Maya now as the leader of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. I'm glad I got her for the hour. Before we get started in conversation, let me play a clip. There are a couple of clips I want to play in this hour. This is the one that everybody's talking about. If you saw the news yesterday or saw the news today about what happened yesterday, it's hard. Every day on this program, we play these clips when I have to, and God knows I don't like to. But sometimes the stuff that comes out of his mouth is just hard to just wrap your brain around. So here's what he said yesterday.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know.
as
It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the Attorney General that question.
They are doubling down in ways that it's hard to, again, to imagine or wrap your brain around. So there's the president yesterday when asked directly, don't you have to uphold the Constitution? His response was, I don't know. I don't know if I have to uphold the Constitution. It'd be laughable if it weren't so funny. Wait till you hear what Stephen Miller had to say. As I said, they are doubling, tripling, quadrupling down. I'll play Stephen Miller for you when we come forward. I can't wait to cut Maya Wiley loose, that is, for the rest of the hour when we come forward here on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
The Comedy Connection series featuring KBLA's Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady. We're going to transform relationship disasters into stand-up material live at Inglewood's Miracle Theater on May 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My clinical team will disclose all of your dating woes, while the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady, has hand-selected supremely talented comedians to roast all of our tragic relationship choices. I dare you to bring your ex's phone number because Ray, he's He's going to text it live, and the crowd will be sourcing emojis. Tickets are moving swiftly, so don't hesitate to grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before I diagnose your dating history as a pre-existing condition.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more, and it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580. Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Maya Wiley, who is the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. Okay, Maya, let's go. You heard the clip a moment ago. Donald Trump said he doesn't know if he needs to obey, uphold the Constitution. I'll let you go. Go, Maya.
Well, as you said, Tavis, I don't know what to say because every sitting president in the United States of America has to take a pledge. When they take the oath of office, they are pledging to protect and uphold the United States Constitution. Donald Trump has now taken this pledge twice. So one question anybody in this country should ask is, what does he not understand on the simple question of will you uphold the U.S. Constitution when you have pledged twice already to do just that? Mm-hmm. And what he's also saying, not only is he not embracing the pledge he already made, he's really saying, I don't know if I like due process if people getting a day in court, getting the ability to have an independent arbiter. That's what a judge is. Doesn't matter who appoints the person. The judge's job is to just do the job, which is decide whether the government itself is violating someone's rights. And what Donald Trump said quite explicitly, if you listen to what he actually said, is, I don't know if I like it, because these courts that our Constitution, federal courts say, have the independent power to check the power of a president, of a federal government that violates rights. I don't like it, because when people get that due process, it stops me. It stops my administration. It stops the people I put in place to say, we are just going to call you a criminal. We're just going to say you are, and get upset if a court says we have to prove it. We'll get upset if we say a court has to tells us that we can't send someone we can't prove has violated any law to a prison in El Salvador, or to Cuba, or to anywhere else that we decide to send them. And what we should remember as a people, as Black people, and I know not everyone who listens to this show is Black, but Tavis, you and I have been Black all our lives, I believe.
Absolutely.
And the Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights is born out of Black liberation struggle. We have these protections because we have fought for them and won them from a civil war that created the 14th Amendment that gives us these due process rights, to birthright citizenship, the thing that says, no, Donald Trump, you cannot tell the homegrowns. I was born in Syracuse, so that makes me a homegrown. The homegrowns, that maybe he can deport us too. And so we have to take very seriously that this is a politician claiming that he doesn't like the Constitution that he gave and swore an oath to protect and uphold.
So let me just try this out for size. It is scary. The thought is scary, Maya, of getting inside Donald Trump's head. But let me try to get inside his head just for a second here. And I acknowledge that this is not easy to do, but a charitable and, how might I put it, a charitable and generous read of what he was saying in that interview when asked whether he has to uphold the Constitution, you recall his response went straight to the Supreme Court. I got all these bright lawyers who work for me in the Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a charitable and generous read of what he was saying is that I don't know if I have to uphold the Constitution as you interpret it, Ms. Welker, or as others may interpret it, because the Supreme Court hasn't really spoken on this yet. And I don't know if the way you read it is the way they're going to read it. My point is that Donald Trump may very well be hiding behind the Supreme Court with regard to whether he has to uphold the Constitution, because he doesn't know how they're going to interpret a couple of these issues in the Constitution that are coming up on the docket. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that is the fairest way you can try to interpret what Donald Trump has said. And certainly it is true that the Supreme Court is the supreme arbiter of interpreting the U.S. Constitution. But if we go back to a couple of things, we have seen this administration do what even one federal court judge has said is ignore federal court orders. Because remember, it isn't just the Supreme Court. When things get all the way to the Supreme Court, obviously the Supreme Court has the last word. But in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, in the case of a man who the government itself, the federal government itself, the Department of Homeland Security itself said it had an order saying he could not be sent to El Salvador because his life would be in danger. They admit that it was an error to put him on a plane to El Salvador, where his life is in danger, and where a federal judge says, go get him back, do everything in your power to get him back, which then goes all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where the Supreme Court does something any court watcher will tell you was unprecedented, that it, at 1 a.m. issues an emergency order saying, you got to do everything in your power to go get him back. And yet we hear, not only was the federal judge earlier, before it gets to the Supreme Court, not only do we find out that judge ordered the administration to turn those planes around because those people had not gotten due process. There was no evidence of whether they had violated any laws. They had the opportunity, doesn't mean they wouldn't have gotten deported, but they had the opportunity to actually have a deportation, not a kidnapping. And we find out that the administration just said, oops, one of those 3 planes was still on the tarmac. Why did that plane make it to El Salvador if they weren't ignoring a federal court order? And it was things like that that created a Supreme Court to do something we've never seen it done before, which is issue that order, say, no, 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 no. When we said facilitate getting him back, we meant do everything in your power. And that is not something, both those things. What we saw, the disrespect we saw to a sitting federal court judge, all the way up to a Supreme Court feeling the need and necessity to do that, is, in plain people speak, not normal. Those are big red flags. And even as we think about the executive order that Donald Trump signed on birthright citizenship, and I'm naming this because there, frankly, are many conservative legal scholars scratching their heads about how any lawyer is saying that the Constitution, which very plainly states in the 14th Amendment that if you're born here, you are a citizen, that an executive order that tries to undermine that directly and explicitly is administration literally trying to take matters into its own hands. And we have yet to see real efforts to comply with the federal courts.
Yeah, and yet the Supreme Court has decided that it is going to hear this birthright citizenship case, which has people on eggshells because nobody knows exactly how they're going to rule, never mind what you've just said, which is clearly the law. But this court has its own way of moving and showing up. So it's one thing for Donald Trump to ignore a federal court order. I get that, and I feel the same way you do about that, as I suspect this entire audience does. The thing that concerns me, and why I raised this question a moment ago about the Supreme Court, is how concerned you are as the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights about the extent to which the Supreme Court will go to empower, or put another way, excuse Donald Trump's behavior, allowing him, in fact, to flout the Constitution. That's the scary part. That the primary body, the chief body, the final arbiter of these cases, with regard to how we interpret the Constitution, could, given how they might show up, empower or excuse him to, as I said, to flout the Constitution. That's the concern for me.
Well, that's certainly something that we are watching closely, and of course, very concerned about. I mean, you know this, Tavis, and your audience may not, but the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is 75 years old this year, founded as a coalition of organizations, body of work for us as a coalition. There's no question that we have never seen a majority of a court as ideological, and in a few instances as clearly flouting ethics laws. And basic ideas, norms, and ideals of the federal court system about what ethical conduct and neutral judging means. And so it's not a surprise that this has been the first court to, in the history of our fundamental rights under the Constitution, to take a fundamental right away. And that is the right to choose when to have a family, when to start a family. Whatever your viewpoints are, the point is that's a personal choice, a fundamental right. This court took it away by overruling Roe versus Wade. And that, as well as its attacks on voting rights, which we have seen and marked, and decisions we would not agree with and don't agree with, as faithfully following the decisions that the Supreme Court has made over decades, upending them, creating chaos as a result of undermining long-standing interpretations about what our fundamental and civil rights are. And that's why public opinion has turned against the court. It's got very low approval ratings. And of course, courts are not supposed to make decisions based on approval ratings. But the reason I raise them is because, there's no question that the public has real questions about how independent this court is. And so we are tracking that as well. And that's why we think about our power as people. As a country, to speak up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry about that. No. You got me thinking here now, though. As you always do whenever you open your mouth. Maya's right, and she makes you think and re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas when she speaks. So I'm thinking, as you're talking now, about what it means to be in this moment. This is a bit philosophical, but I think you can do something with it. I'm thinking about what it means to be in this moment, as you've just laid it out, where in this experiment in democracy, I always call it an experiment in democracy because I think we have a Madisonian framework for it. We haven't quite achieved it yet, as I often say. But we're in a moment, as you just laid out beautifully and brilliantly, where we have a court system that is shrinking rights and not expanding rights. This democracy has always been at its best, as I read it. I'm not the scholar that you are, but we are at our best when we're expanding rights and not shrinking rights. Clearly, we're in the latter right now, where rights are being shrunk every single day. What does that say to you about the future of the democracy when rights are being taken away and not expanded?
What I say, and I think many of us do, and thank you for the kind words, Tavis. They mean a lot to me, especially coming from you. Look, we stand on some very broad shoulders. And we know, as Black people in this country, that democracy is not a promise. Democracy is a demand. And if it weren't for Black liberation struggle, there are many people in this country who are white, many people in this country of all races, of all creeds, of all backgrounds, who would not have fundamental rights in this country. In fact, you know, we remember and should remember there was a time when if you were Italian, if you were Irish, you actually did not have the protections and you were treated as something other than white, and only whiteness was protected. And I remind us of that because it wasn't that long ago. And when we fought for and won a civil war, but also 100 years after a civil war, that the civil rights struggle won everything from the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that said, no, you can't keep people out of your restaurants or hotels or sitting in backs of the bus because of who they are. No, we do have to have schools that serve all our students. In fact, we fought for and won funding free lunch programs. We fought for and won being able to see a doctor when you're sick. We fought for and won things that we have come in this country to think of as critical to the meaning of the people, not only deciding who leads them, not only having the power to vote and to choose, but what those choices are supposed to produce and how the courts are supposed to protect us if politicians try to come for us. And I say all that because there's no question that we now are in what I consider to be something that for Black people is familiar authoritarianism, but that has come for the whole country, that has come for every community. And the power that we have as a civil rights movement that is in every zip code and that looks like every person and that recognizes that we have to be united as a people to say our government serves us, it can't serve us up.
Wow.
For its own corrupt ends. And it is our unity, and it is why we have organized collectively and publicly two things. An open letter to the American public saying, right now we have a government trying to make us afraid to speak out, trying to make us afraid to show up at polls, trying to make us afraid to even serve our people and even to stand up for civil rights, whether we're academics, whether we're in charitable organizations that give out money for community services, whether we are advocates, as we are at the Leadership Conference. And that is our willingness to be loud, to speak out and refuse to be silent. That is the history of the civil rights struggle. And it is how we have fought the racism of the past. And it's how we're going to fight the authoritarianism of the present, which frankly has a lot of racism behind it. And we should acknowledge that. We shouldn't run away from that. And sexism and all the isms. And this is not something that we don't know how to fight. It just requires us to recognize it's all of us and we have to do it together.
She's warming up. She's warming up. Glad I got another half hour. And nobody's turning a phrase these days, quite like Maya Wiley. Did you hear that? Democracy is not a promise. It is a demand. Lord Jesus, I love that. Democracy, not a promise. It is a demand. And the government that serves us should not be serving us up. I digress for now. Love me some Maya Wiley. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
Gregory Wood with BIN News Now. President Trump says he has no plans to run again. He was asked about his organization website selling 2028 gear on NBC's Meet the Press.
There are many people selling the 2028 hat, but this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years.
Trump added there are a lot of good Republicans that could be president in 2028. He mentioned Vice President J.D. Vance, but said he's not endorsing anyone at this time. Jury selection starts today in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The disgraced rapper and music mogul is facing several federal charges, including sex trafficking and prostitution, where he allegedly coerced women into sexual orgies he called freak-offs. And Marvel's Thunderbolts opened with $76 million domestically and $162 million globally. It's also a hit with critics, with 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org. Is this the time?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. With the Lakers and Clippers out of the NBA playoffs, NBA fans in LA will have to decide on who to root for. The Golden State Warriors might be at the top of the list. Golden State won Game 7 in Houston on Sunday to advance to the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State is at Minnesota Tuesday for Game 1 of a best-of-7 series. After eliminating the Clippers Saturday, the Denver Nuggets are at Oklahoma City tonight for Game 1. In the Eastern Conference, New York is at Boston tonight for Game 1. Indiana has a 1-0 lead over Cleveland, the top seed in the East. Game 2 is Tuesday. Congratulations to Jackson State University baseball coach Omar Johnson. Johnson earned his 600th career win Sunday with Jackson State's 5-0 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Johnson, in his 16th season at Jackson State, has led the HBCU program to 2 SWAC championships and 30 or more wins in 14 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Karen Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Karen Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Maya Wiley, who's the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, now celebrating its 75th anniversary. How blessed are they to have her at the helm of this amazing organization, some 200 other organizations that are a part of the LCCR, and she is their leader, and I'm delighted to have her on this program in the first hour. Again, in case you just tuned in, she's been dropping bars. Democracy is not a promise. Democracy is a demand. A government that serves us ought not be serving us up as it is these days. But she's doing her thing today, and I'm again delighted to have her on this program. I started this hour with a clip from Donald Trump yesterday on Meet the Press, suggesting that he didn't know whether or not he needed to uphold the Constitution. And Maya dispensed of that rather quickly in the first half hour. Let me start this second half hour with Maya Wiley with a clip from Stephen Miller. So if you think the Donald Trump thing was crazy, and it was, listen to what Stephen Miller had to say the other day.
This administration is not going to let our society devolve into communist, woke, DEI strangulation. We are going to have a system of merit, which is not just a social and cultural issue, it's an economic issue. When you hire, retain, and recruit based on merit, as President Trump has directed, you advance innovation, you advance growth, you advance investment, you advance job creation, you create the best and safest product for all Americans. When a citizen goes to, say, a hospital in a medical emergency, they don't care what race or sex their doctor or their nurse is. They want the best treatment they can get in that emergency. When they're flying a plane or when they're on an aircraft, they want that pilot to be the best pilot, the safest pilot, not caring what that pilot's race or sex is. This applies across the whole government. In particular, looking at our university system. This administration has opened investigations into universities across the country for violating, and we talk a lot about Supreme Court rulings, universities across this country are in plain and direct violation of the Supreme Court's ruling that affirmative action, as in racial quotas and set-asides, are illegal. Students must be admitted to universities on a color-blind basis. But we have demonstrated through clear evidence that our university system, including our medical schools, and perhaps particularly our medical schools, are engaging in race-based discrimination, racial set-asides, racial quota schemes, and other efforts to evade the Supreme Court's ruling, and again, the plain text of federal statute.
Again, this would be laughable if the person uttering those words were not the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, who himself is part of an immigrant family, but now wants to pull up the ladder and espouse the kind of viewpoints you've just heard him share a moment ago. So if you listen to that clip, Maya, as I did, I guess the takeaway is that the most qualified person for the job just can't be both a woman and black, can't be a male and brown. You take my point. I'm anxious to hear your feedback.
Ooh, how much time do we have, Gabby? How much time?
About 5 minutes right now, and then we'll continue as we come
Lord.
forward. Yeah,
Well,
take it all.
I mean,
Take it all.
I think we should start with the fact that this is the administration that fired a Black Joint Chief.
That's right.
That had served over 3,000 hours in combat, a Black man, a general, frankly, from all we can tell, because he was Black. Secondly, the highest ranking woman in the military, the first to head the Navy, who again came with combat experience and tons of leadership in, I think, 3 of the 4 theaters that the Navy operates in, was fired. What we've seen is the termination of qualified leaders in government because they looked like people like us. And I say that because of the incredible hypocrisy of what we've heard from Stephen Miller. By the way, anyone who is interested should track some of the background on Stephen Miller and some of his affiliations and connections, including recommending that someone read a neo-Nazi treatise. But I digress. Let's go to what is actually happening. So everyone agrees that it is the people who are most qualified who should be hired, the people who are most deserving who should be admitted. All of that is something we all agree to. And we had to have a civil rights movement to make sure that actually happened, because we were discriminated against because of what we looked like or where we came from rather than what we could do. And we made progress. But this administration has frontally attacked anything that says you can learn your history if it is uncomfortable to people who are white, and it is called that DE&I. It has just decided to take money out of mental health care for children in schools, things that got passed because of Uvalde. Remember the incredibly horrific mass shooting that took the lives of babies and crushed the mental health of an entire community. But those grants, this administration canceled on the grounds that it was diversity, equity, and inclusion, which it abhors, despite the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion is done right, is lawful and advances and protects civil rights laws that are on the books. But it's taken away because language proficiency in serving, if you're a counselor, or a school psychologist, or that you have actual knowledge and experience in the communities that whose mental health you are serving, is itself considered bad. In other words, when you heard Stephen Miller say, everyone wants the best doctor, well, do Black people get to have the best doctors? Because the attack right now is on what we know has increased our life expectancy by 3 years. We still live shorter lives than people who are white, but we did reduce it from about 7 years less life expectancy to about 3.5 years less life expectancy. And the kind of things that helped us do that were programs and grants and activities and data tracking from government that it did because it recognized you can't solve a problem you refuse to see. And it doesn't now want us to see problems in communities of color. And you can't solve them if part of the solution says, you know what, our kids in Black schools actually, we have seen an increase in academic achievement when they have had teachers that share their backgrounds and understand some of their challenges. That we have seen an increase in life expectancy when we have understood that by diversifying the medical profession, we see more doctors, more qualified doctors in communities and less bias that has meant less pain reduction for us, or the kinds of screening that we should get because we are not being overlooked in our need. So what they're really saying is, we don't want to see racial disparities, we don't want to talk about who needs, and we don't care if what it does is takes us back to the 1950s or the 1850s, because we're just going to call it woke, and we're going to say woke is bad. And the only thing I can say to you is, you can't fix a problem you sleep on.
You can't
so wake up.
You can't fix a problem you sleep on. You can't solve a problem you refuse to see. As I said, Maya Wiley is dropping bars. You see now why these 200-plus organizations that are part of the LCCR, Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, are pleased to have her as their leader, and I'm pleased to have her on this program right now. More of her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Maya Wiley, who's the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. I want to just double-click, if I can, on this notion of merit. The White House's suggestion that we are going to have a system of merit, and they're doubling down on what they regard as the Constitution's promise of colorblind equality. I guess merit doesn't matter if you're the Secretary of the Defense Department or most of the other folk in this cabinet, but again, I digress on that point. I want to ask you right quick, Maya, and my time is getting tired of me, what you would say to us about this notion that, again, they are standing, the Trump team that is, standing on what they would refer to as the Constitution's promise of colorblind equality. I hate that word colorblind. I tell people all the time as a King student, you will not find anywhere in any speech King ever gave the use of the word colorblind. Think about what that word suggests, that you don't see us for who we are. But they are standing on this premise, this notion that the Constitution guarantees colorblind equality. Help us to understand how we should respond to that when we hear that refrain.
Well, our response should be that we not only won a civil war and passage of the incredibly important Civil War amendment, the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, but also all the civil rights laws we have won ever since, from education to healthcare to disability rights, across the board, voting rights, all have required, and Supreme Court precedent has even said that the thing that we need to do is advance civil rights. Even Lyndon Baines Johnson made clear that this wasn't about just saying, we're going to start everyone as if they're in the same place and ignore that they're not. In fact, our job is to ensure that everyone has full opportunity. And that does mean paying attention to where people do not. And the real work that this kind of fake notion of, it's not color blindness that the law demands, it's fairness and equal opportunity. That's not the same as blindness. So what this administration is trying to do is pervert it by saying, we are going to blind this country to what we need to do to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity. And I just want to take 1 minute to give the Harvard example, since this administration is now attacking Harvard.
Hold that thought 1 second. I promise you, in our remaining moments, I'll let you do just that. She's making a powerful point here now about equality versus equity. Equality is one thing, equity is quite another, and you got to see people for who they are and where they are and respond in kind. I digress on that for now. When we come forward in our remaining moments, we'll let Maya Wiley give the Harvard example. You're listening to her right now, and I'm glad about it, on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. You really about to do it? Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card, so let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything! The Capital One Saver card is at table 27, and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu!
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Maya Wiley, president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. I got 4.5 minutes. I'm going to give it all to Maya after I tell you some breaking news. Share this with you. The White House has just announced to pay immigrants. I am not making this up. The White House has just offered to pay immigrants $1,000 and a plane ride home if they will self-deport. This is their latest effort to increase deportations. They've just announced this. We will give you $1,000 and a plane ride home if you self-deport. I'm laughing when I saw it. I paid a coyote $10,000 to get here. It cost me $10,000 to get here, and you're going to give me $1,000 to go back? I'm losing $9,000 on that deal. I digress. The last 4 minutes with your Harvard example or whatever else you want, Maya, belong to you. Take it away.
Well, we were talking about this notion of the attacks on diversity and what Stephen Miller said about merit. But let's take Harvard, because this administration is attacking Harvard's not-for-profit status, trying to say that it shouldn't be able to get tax-deductible contributions. But lots to say about Harvard, but just looking at merit and admissions, 43% of students admitted to Harvard are admitted because their parents went to Harvard or they are a donor to Harvard.
That part.
How is that merit? Help me understand, because the vast majority of merit of legacy applicants, alumni children who are applying, 70% are white. So am I saying those kids shouldn't get to go to college? Of course not. But we pretend like there isn't a system that is rigged that ensures that children who are from backgrounds that have not been privileged over generations are somehow, if they get in, getting in unfairly, while we ignore all these affirmative action programs for kids who have money and legacy. So I will also couple this with, this is an administration that today is starting to demand repayment of student loans where so many students cannot afford to repay them, has refused to be part of the solving the problem of affordability to higher education, and yet has the nerve to tell us that what it must focus on is this fake news about somehow a bunch of undeserving people of color getting over on others. That's not what's happening in this country. It is not what's good for this country. And the vast majority of Americans know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is good for everyone and includes everyone. And I'll say this, the State of the People Power Tour, if you do not know about it, many of us are, including the Leadership Conference, the NAACP, the Advancement Project, Black Voters Matter, Joy Reid, Roland Martin, Angela Rye, so many others are actually going community to community to actually talk about the power we have to fight politicians who think we don't belong or do not deserve. Because we do, we will, and we won't go back.
The fight back is real, and I love seeing our people hitting the road as we should to make sure that we understand that when we fight, we win. And so the struggle is real, but so is the fight back. And I am pleased to see that Maya Wiley and so many others are doing their jobs as they always have. She's the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. I've been honored to have had her on this program. We will do it again, I can assure you. Maya, thanks for your insights. Enjoy the rest of your day. I deeply appreciate you coming on.
Tavis, thanks for you. Thanks for this show. And thanks to all our people.
Indeed, indeed. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. President Trump says he has no plans to run again. He was asked about his organization website selling 2028 gear on NBC's Meet the Press.
There are many people selling the 2028 hat, but this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years.
Trump added there are a lot of good Republicans that could be president in 2028. He mentioned Vice President J.D. Vance, but said he's not endorsing anyone at this time. Jury selection starts today in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The disgraced rapper and music mogul is facing several federal charges, including sex trafficking and prostitution, where he allegedly coerced women into sexual orgies he called freak-offs. And Marvel's Thunderbolts opened with $76 million domestically and $162 million globally. It's also a hit with critics with 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Is this the takeover? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
With the Lakers and Clippers out of the NBA playoffs, NBA fans in LA will have to decide on who to root for. The Golden State Warriors might be at the top of the list. Golden State won Game 7 in Houston on Sunday to advance to the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State is at Minnesota Tuesday for Game 1 of a best-of-7 series. After eliminating the Clippers Saturday, the Denver Nuggets are at Oklahoma City tonight for Game 1. In the Eastern Conference, New York is at Boston tonight for Game 1. Indiana has a 1-0 lead over Cleveland, the top seed in the East. Game 2 is Tuesday. Congratulations to Jackson State University baseball coach Omar Johnson. Johnson earned his 600th career win Sunday with Jackson State's 5-0 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Johnson, in his 16th season at Jackson State, has led the HBCU program to 2 SWAC championships and 30 or more wins in 14 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall, alongside every episode of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
We were just saying that when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. So we keep our head to the sky, and we keep on fighting. What a fire first hour that was with Maya Wiley. Love her. And I thank Maya for her time, and I'm delighted to be in this seat for this hour as well. The average American is much closer to being homeless than being Elon Musk. Let me unpack that for just a second. So this year alone, Elon Musk has lost nearly $100 billion of his net worth. Lost $100 billion of his net worth, leaving him with a mere $333 billion. That's all he's got left. He's lost $100 million of his net worth. He only has $333 billion left, according to Bloomberg estimates, in part because that Tesla stock keeps going down. But at $333 billion, that's more money than the average American could get, even if they won the Powerball Lotto, which has never exceeded $2.4 billion. So even if you won Powerball, you'd be nowhere near what Elon Musk is worth after losing $100 billion of his net worth this year. And the odds of grabbing that windfall, that Powerball Lotto, the odds of that windfall are 1 in 292.2 million. Just want to give you some perspective. I want to frame this conversation properly about how the average American is so much closer to being homeless than to being Elon Musk. The average American makes roughly $62,000 a year. More than half of Americans say they're barely making ends meet, and 2 out of 5 don't have $1,000 to spare if their car breaks down or another emergency crops up. That's the frame that we are in. It's important, I think, to have our frame right at the outset of this conversation, so that these homeless encampments are growing all across America. The Supreme Court has had some things to say about these homeless encampments. We'll get into that in this hour. But these encampments are growing literally from California to the Carolinas, and so too is the number of working homeless people laboring without a roof. First of all, if you work, you shouldn't be homeless. But there are too many fellow citizens who are homeless, yet working, even as they labor again without a roof. And so I'm delighted to welcome to this program Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, Assistant Professor of Urban and Regional Planning at Michigan State University, to talk about this for the rest of the hour. It's good to have you on, Deyanira. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you on the program. I tried to, as you heard a moment ago, set the frame, or set a frame for this conversation. But that said, let me just ask you to give me a bit more of the frame as it relates specifically to homelessness in this country, and then we'll jump from there.
Yes, so the latest numbers from the 2024 point in time count show that over 770,000 people are experiencing homelessness in the United States. 32% of those folks who are unhoused are Black. That is a overrepresentation of that community in the unhoused community, because only about 12% of the U.S. population is Black. And then Latinx folks account for around 30% of our unhoused population. And the Latinx community is actually experiencing the highest increases in homelessness in the last couple of point-in-time counts, which is essentially our unhoused census, when we go out one day a year and count our unhoused population. The issue with this, though, as well, is that 770,000, over 770,000 is a huge number, but it is also most likely a very big undercount of the actual number. And some of the research that I've done with several colleagues, we try to problematize the definition that we currently use of homelessness, because homelessness can look a lot of different ways, right? And so we know that this is a severe undercount of unhoused individuals in our country.
There's a lot there, and I'm glad you took the time to lay that out for me. So when we come forward and get this conversation started for real, there are a number of things I want to probe that Deyanira has already laid out. One, I want to come back to this issue of definition and how we are defining homelessness or houselessness these days. What is that definition, number one? Number two, no naivete here, but why is there such a huge overrepresentation of Black folk in the homeless community? Why the overrepresentation? Why, for that matter, is the Latin number going faster than any other number? And let me just pivot right back to the Black number right quick. You do realize that the face of homelessness, certainly in this city of L.A. where I sit, and frankly across the country, is a Black male face. Black men are now the face of homelessness in this country, never mind that Latin number at the moment rising faster than any other numbers. There's a whole lot to unpack in this hour, and that's just the problem. We ain't got to the solutions yet. We ain't got what the Supreme Court is saying of late about homeless encampments across the country. But just look around you here in L.A., and for that matter, every other city, in Chicago, in New York. The issue that mayors and municipal leaders are wrestling with is what to do about homelessness. These numbers went up dramatically during the Reagan era. You've heard any number of times on this program these comparisons between the Reagan era and the Trump era. Well, during the Reagan era, I repeat, homelessness was off the charts. And my sense is that we're going to experience the same thing during Trump 2.0. But again, we've got a whole hour to unpack this, and I'm delighted to have, again, Deyanira Nevárez Martínez as our guest out of Michigan State. More with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening. Charitable listening. It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Thy ticket, Lady Jennifer of Coolidge.
Well, many thanks, good sir. Here'th my Discover card.
They accept Discover at Renaissance fairs?
Yeah, they do here. Discover's accepted at the places I love to shop. Getteth with the times.
With the times?
You're playing the lute. Yeah, and it sounds pretty good, right?
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more, and it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580. Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, who is a professor of urban and regional planning at Michigan State University, who has been researching this issue of houselessness, homelessness in this country, and the data suggests that we need to be in a serious conversation about it, as we are in this hour of Tavis Smiley. Glad to have you tuned in. Not an easy subject, but one that needs to be addressed anyway. As I said a moment ago, in case you just tuned in, during the Reagan era, and there's so many comparisons between Trump and Reagan, or Reagan and Trump. In the Reagan era, homelessness went through the roof. And I suspect that we're going to see the same thing. The data already indicates that we are, in fact, seeing the same kind of explosion of houselessness, homelessness in this country, if you will. And so no time like the present to have a conversation about it. I see messages everywhere already at the outset of this hour and this issue. Let me just read one message right quick that jumped out at me. Tavis, this homelessness issue keeps me up at night. I'm scared, not only for others, but if I'm being completely honest, for even myself. How could that be? I do not know. So there are listeners who are wrestling with this issue right now, keeping people up at night, worried about others, but indeed concerned about themselves, their families, and the ones that they love. And that is how vast an impact this issue is having on communities literally from California to the Carolinas. So, Professor Martinez, you said a few things earlier that I want to come to right quick as we move forward here. So, again, no naivete in asking this question, but you told us a moment ago, at the moment, we think there are about 770,000 people who are homeless in this country. That number is an undercount. By the way, you mentioned that one day a year where communities across the country go out and count the homeless. I've done that a couple of times here in LA with friends of mine. I've gone out to be a part of doing that count annually here in Los Angeles. I know what that day is like, what that night is like, and what it's like walking around counting people who are homeless. So this overrepresentation of black people at 32% is born of what?
It's systemic oppression that has, lingered with our history in the U.S. The assistance and the safety nets that could help the population have been stripped away. You mentioned President Reagan, and there was really a lot of government retrenchment during those years. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right that we're experiencing that, but on steroids currently. And so without assistance to be able to, pay your rent, to be able to get job training, to be able to do all of these issues, there really is a lack of safety net for these folks.
Yep. What does government retrenchment look like? I know what it looked like during the Reagan era. I was there and glad to still be here now, this issue notwithstanding. So unpack what government retrenchment looks like in this particular moment.
Right. So currently the federal government is retrenchment looks like the skinny budget that has been proposed by the administration will most likely include deep cuts to voucher programs, deep cuts to money that communities can use for permanent supportive housing, for all of these services that we really need at the local level to help folks with housing.
The Latin number you mentioned earlier, again, just following up on some things you said, you've already said in this conversation, and we'll build from there. So the Latin number is growing exponentially. What's driving that?
Yes. So the Latinx number is interesting, and it's one of those things that I've really spent a lot of time researching with colleagues in LA, Dr. Melissa Chinchilla, for example, at UCLA, and previously with the VA of Greater Los Angeles. What we've seen with the Latinx community is this conflation for a very, very long time between multi-generational households and overcrowding. And of course, being Latinx myself, we do live in multi-generational households, right? But it is a different situation when your grandmother or your aunt lives with you than when you have a household with your sister, her whole family, and then your comadre and maybe your cousin, because they have nowhere else to go. And for a very long time, this has been happening in our community. And then COVID hit, and it really brought this issue to a head. Our community was really at the front lines of COVID, and we saw that this overcrowding really created an issue where our folks were dying at higher rates than other communities. And we really saw this safety net really get overextended. And we are seeing that this doubled up homelessness, which is what we call this overcrowding, spilling over into literal homelessness.
In case you are not tuned in to the first hour, first of all, you missed a good one with Maya Wiley of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, but there was some breaking news in the first hour that I shared. I share again now, born of what Professor Martinez is sharing with us. Just last hour, the White House announced that they are offering $1,000 stipends to persons who self-deport. They give you a free plane ride back home and a $1,000 voucher if you self-deport. It speaks to a number of things to my mind. One, the desperation that the Trump team feels trying to increase these deportation numbers. They're obviously not having much success when they're asking people to self-deport at $1,000. Number one, they're desperate. Number two, it's disrespectful. $1,000, really? As I said last hour, I paid $10,000 to a coyote. Well, not me personally. You take the metaphor, though. I paid $10,000 to a coyote to get me here. and you're offering me $1,000 to go back, that's a $9,000 deficit. Do I look like Boo Boo the Fool? Do I look stuck on stupid? It's just insulting, disrespectful all the way around. But the third point that I want to make here, which connects to this conversation, is that while we are seeing this administration retrench on houselessness and homelessness, they're doubling down on deportation. That's the connection, right? So the things that really matter, they're in retrenchment mode on, and the things that are good for headlines and politics, they're doubling down on, like offering again people $1,000 and a plane ride home to self-deport. I digress on that for now. Talk to me, Professor Martinez, about where, to the extent you know, we are seeing these numbers increase most dramatically. When I say where, I mean regionally now, location-wise.
Yes. So this is the thing with this current issue is that while we've seen and experienced homelessness mostly as a coastal city issue, we currently have a national crisis, and you will see increased numbers of homelessness throughout the country. So it's not just LA and the Bay and New York City anymore. It is every single community in our country that is experiencing an increased number of unhoused folks. And this is really intersecting with our current housing crisis and other issues. So, for example, after the COVID pandemic as well. So all of these intersecting issues are really creating an issue where we're seeing an increase nationwide.
So do me a favor, take a moment here and link, I'm glad you went there, I wanted to go there anyway, link for me the increase in homelessness or houselessness with the housing crisis that we see literally all across the country. Link those two things up for me, homelessness and a housing crisis.
Yes, so we are currently experiencing an unprecedented affordability crisis in our country. And for a long time in our country, we thought of homelessness as a moral failing, or maybe something that happens to people that make bad choices, like doing drugs, or they are lazy and they don't work. However, as we've seen the housing crisis increase, we've also seen our homelessness crisis increase. And really, I think that if there is anything positive that can be seen about this, is that it's actually helping us change the way that we think about homelessness. Like I said, for a long time, we thought about it as a social issue, as a personal failing issue. But we really are seeing now that homelessness is a housing issue. And the way to solve it is through housing. And we've really seen it as the increase in rents, as individual folks see that we're all just, you mentioned it in the beginning of the segment, we're all just 1 or 2 paychecks away from being unhoused. And so as individuals have felt that precarity, it's really transformed our view of homelessness into a housing issue, which is what it should have really been thought of as through, as always. And so this link has been made a lot more tangible for folks as their rent has become too high as well.
Let me draw a parallel here. I've said many times over the course of my career that we would think about, you mentioned drugs a moment ago, when we think about the drug crisis in this country, our approach to the drug crisis has always been backwards. It's always been wrong. We have attempted to approach this drug problem in this country, this drug crisis, as an issue of criminality first rather than health. It's a health issue far more than it is an issue of criminality. And that's why we've seen the devastating impacts of people who have drug issues, drug problems, being locked up when what they really need is to be in a facility to get help with their addiction. So we've seen the drug crisis wrong since day one. Approaching it as an issue of criminality when it ought to be seen first and foremost as a health crisis. Here you come now suggesting to me, and I think you're right about this, that homelessness is really a housing issue. And so long as we have housing that is unaffordable or a lack of available housing for everyday people all across this country, if you have a housing issue, you're going to have a homelessness issue, right? And so it's about, as I said at the top of this conversation, getting the frame right. Give me your sense of how we have for so long gotten the frame wrong, not just about the drug issue, but about the homelessness issue. I'd love your point, but tell me how we got the frame so wrong.
Yeah, a lot of it is that in our society, especially in American society, we're so individualistic, and we we don't believe that if you're lazy, you should be getting handouts, or that if you are poor, that's your fault, that it's nobody else's. And so this perception kind of bleeds out into these issues, and it should be, we make it into well, if they're unhoused, it must be because they're drug addicts or because they have something wrong with them, right? Without actually thinking, like you mentioned it earlier as well, that we have a huge number of working homeless individuals. The majority of the folks that I've worked with in the last decade doing my research have had jobs, but they don't make enough money to pay for rent. And so this is where the miscommunication really comes in, because the majority of folks don't know that our unhoused folks have jobs. Yeah. Here in Lansing, I was just talking with a community business owner who was telling me that behind one of the apartment complexes that they manage, a person sleeps in a tent and then he walks across the street to work at the Little Caesars. And so really, we have been missing that bigger picture of what this really looks like. And that's how we've kind of gotten this backwards. What we really need, and you've also alluded to that, is a housing first approach, because this is a housing issue. The only thing that solves homelessness is housing. And so we should be putting folks in housing first, because once you do that, it's a lot easier to get folks to go to get into recovery if they're indoors. It's a lot easier to reconnect folks with family if they're indoors. It's a lot easier to get them into job training and all of these other things once somebody is housed.
Yeah. I want to talk about the politics of this issue. I only got 2 minutes here right now. We'll continue, of course, when we come forward. So let me just get you to respond to this part first, and again, we got the rest of the hour to continue when we come forward. But I want to talk again about the politics in two regards. One, the politics of housing in cities all across the country, and then the politics of these encampments on which the Supreme Court has already spoken. We'll come to that part secondly. But in the 2 minutes I have right quick here now, talk to me about the politics of housing in cities all across this country.
Yeah, so that's actually a very interesting question to me, because homelessness is one of these issues that does not cut neatly through partisan lines. So you will have coalitions of very conservative religious folks who want to help the unhoused because it's in their their values, their religious values. And then you'll have groups of very liberal folks who have very strong NIMBY, not in my backyard attitudes that sometimes often weaponize things like environmental law to work against unhoused people and encampments. And so this makes it a very difficult issue sometimes at the local level. However, there is an opportunity right now, I think, as individuals who aren't unhoused start to feel how the housing crisis is affecting them, to maybe do more at the local level. Be supportive of affordable housing in your community. Be supportive of increasing shelter spaces in your community, and providing services to folks who are in need.
Yeah. We come forward among the other things I said I wanted to tackle a moment ago about the politics of this issue. Certainly, the politics of these encampments on which the Supreme Court again has already spoken, and cities have and governors have decided to move certain ways based on the cover. I'm putting that word in air quotes. The cover that the Supreme Court gave them to do what they wanted to do, essentially on these encampments. We'll talk about that when we come forward. But there's a great deal more that I want to cover about this issue that is becoming more and more hegemonic every single day all across this country. I repeat once again, we saw homelessness jump dramatically, exponentially during the Reagan era. The same thing is happening right about now, and that is why we're talking about it right about now on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward? Because he's not going back. And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever. Backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Jury selection begins in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial in Manhattan, New York. People are weighing in on if they'd be a fair juror in this case.
I wouldn't want to be, but yeah, I'm pretty fair with decision making.
Oh, you don't want me to be a juror in that jury. He's guilty.
Me? Nah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't do court.
Diddy pleads not guilty and rejected a plea deal. 3 people are dead and 5 injured after a shooting at a Cinco de Mayo party at El Camarón Gigante in Glendale, Arizona. Police suspect multiple shooters but have made no arrests. The Mexican consulate in Phoenix is offering support to those affected. And Beyoncé received a cease and desist from the Las Vegas Sphere over a Cowboy Carter tour visual showing a giant version of herself picking up the venue and playing with it. The Sphere claims it was used without permission. Beyoncé has since replaced the Sphere with the Allegiant Stadium, where she'll close out the tour in July. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Is this the takeover? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
With the Lakers and Clippers out of the NBA playoffs, NBA fans in LA will have to decide on who to root for. The Golden State Warriors might be at the top of the list. Golden State won Game 7 in Houston on Sunday to advance to the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State is at Minnesota Tuesday for Game 1 of a best-of-7 series. After eliminating the Clippers Saturday, the Denver Nuggets are at Oklahoma City tonight for Game 1. In the Eastern Conference, New York is at Boston tonight for Game 1. Indiana has a 1-0 lead over Cleveland, the top seed in the East. Game 2 is Tuesday. Congratulations to Jackson State University baseball coach Omar Johnson. Johnson earned his 600th career win Sunday with Jackson State's 5-0 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Johnson, in his 16th season at Jackson State, has led the HBCU program to 2 SWAC championships and 30 or more wins in 14 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow. And ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, who is a professor of urban and regional planning at Michigan State University out in East Lansing. Delighted to have her on this program, although the subject matter is not one that many people want to talk about, but indeed it's a conversation that must be addressed. We're talking about the growing number of houseless and homeless people in this country. Some 770,000 people right now is the official number, but you know that's an undercount, because when we go out one day a year to count people who are homeless, there's no way you can track everybody. So you do the best you can, but we know that number is undercounted at 770,000 right about now. And in case you just tuned in, black people in particular are overrepresented in that number at 32%. We're nowhere near 32% of the population, so we are overrepresented in that number. And our Latin brothers and sisters are the fastest growing group right now of unhoused people in this country. And as I said earlier, again, that the face of homelessness in this country right now is still a black male. That's a conversation unto itself. Perhaps we'll get back to that. But those are just some of the numbers that give you a sense of the frame that we are inside of. I repeat one more again, that we saw these numbers go off the charts. These numbers of homeless people go off the charts during the Reagan era. And we can't sit idly by 100 days plus into the Trump administration with data, which is incontrovertible, suggesting that these numbers are rising once again in Trump 2.0, and act like we don't see it. Maya Wiley, I guess in the first hour, said today, you can't solve a problem that you refuse to see. You cannot solve a problem you refuse to see. And so many of us refuse to see it even as it's in front of our eyes. And so as everyday people, we can't miss it. You see the encampments everywhere you go, in L.A., in New York, in Chicago, everywhere I'm on the air right now, all across the country. You see the encampments, and so we see it, but we act like we don't see it. And certainly politicians are having a difficult time trying to wrestle with this issue. So we were talking to Professor Martinez a moment ago about the politics of housing. So at the end of the day, as long as you got a housing problem, you got a houseless problem. You got a housing problem, you got a homelessness problem. And so those two things cannot be disconnected. And we were spending some moments, again, a little bit ago, talking about how we have gotten the frame wrong for this conversation about homelessness. You have to talk about housing, and there's so many politics on that particular issue. Speaking of politics, I was deeply troubled by the Supreme Court decision some time ago about these encampments, and it didn't take long for Gavin Newsom, governor here in California, and others to use that decision as cover to start to address encampments in the way they choose to. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, of course, in City of Grants Pass versus Oregon, City of Grants Pass, Oregon, versus Johnson, that laws regulating camping on public property could be addressed because they drastically affect the rights of people who experience homelessness. And so I wonder, Professor Martinez, what you say about that Supreme Court decision, and more to the point, the way that cities and states started moving immediately when this decision about encampments came down.
Yes, so the Grants Pass case overturned a previous case from the Ninth Circuit, which was Martin v. Boise. And in Martin v. Boise, the Ninth Circuit had stated that you could not fine an unhoused person for sleeping outside, for example, if your city didn't have enough shelter beds for all of the unhoused individuals in your city. And so their reasoning for that was that sleeping is a biological function. Every single person has to do this. And so criminalizing people for doing something that they can't help but do is cruel. They said, tantamount to cruel and unusual punishment. And so for several years, that was the law on the books in the Ninth Circuit. And so cities really had to ramp up their shelter availability if they wanted to be able to also enforce their anti-camping laws. And so in Grants Pass, however, the Supreme Court said that that wasn't necessarily the case, that the folks in Grants Pass were not criminalizing the status of being homeless, but rather prohibiting specific actions. And therefore, the cities could enforce their public camping ordinances, even if the cities didn't have enough shelter beds. And so essentially what happens is that now the Supreme Court has greenlit criminalizing homelessness and criminalizing poverty, which is also something that should, concern the rest of us as well, because we're essentially saying, if you're unhoused, we don't want to see you. And so then we're able to criminalize you. As a social scientist, myself and 57 other colleagues of mine who have worked and done research with unhoused folks and have published in peer-reviewed journals our research, we submitted an amicus brief in this case. And the brief was actually cited on by both the majority opinion and the dissenters. And in there, we made very clear that these punitive approaches don't work. Our research has showed over and over that that's not a helpful approach for individuals. It actually keeps them in these cycles of poverty and criminality that makes it a lot harder for them to reintegrate into society and actually find housing. If you've gone to jail, it's a lot harder to find housing when you get out. And so we are proponents to a much more care-based approach and also a housing first approach.
Yep. So that's the thorny issue. That is the tricky issue. How do you, this Supreme Court decision notwithstanding about these encampments all across the country, how do you, on the one hand, not criminalize the poor, but on the other hand, not encourage the escalation of encampments? Isn't that the trick? The tricky question, at least?
Yeah, well, so there's several issues here, right, that we need to really talk about. And this is the issue of encampments. A lot of times when, I'll be talking about this issue, people always come back with well, there's a lot of people who just want to live in encampments and they turn down shelter and they do this and the reality is a lot more complicated than that. An individual may turn down shelter, but not because they don't want to be indoors, but because the shelter has a really strict curfew rule, or because the shelter has a rule where you can't have your pet with you. And if you've been unhoused for 10 years and have gone through a really difficult time, and the one thing that was with you that whole time was your pet, you're not going to go somewhere where you can't be with your pet. A lot of we talked about government retrenchment. In those Reagan years, when we retrenched from providing services, we farmed out a lot of our services to nonprofits, many of which have religious agendas. And so an individual going to one of their shelters may have to attend church services or Bible studies, and they may not align with their religious views. If you are an LGBTQIA person or youth, you're not going to be let into a shelter run by the Catholic church, for example. And so these conversations are really difficult because an individual is not necessarily in an encampment because they prefer that, but because that's just what accommodates the realities of their life.
It is a thorny issue, a tricky issue, as I said a moment ago. But I love your analysis that these issues always have layers to them. They're very layered, very textured. And so this notion of one size fits all, or this notion that people are homeless because they want to be or they love living in encampments, they turn down housing. No. It's much more complicated than that. And I appreciate Professor Martinez for breaking that down. More to cover with her when we come forward, talking about the growing number of working homeless folk in this country, laboring without a roof. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down. He's a paradigm pioneer and the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley and Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, who's a professor of urban and regional planning at Michigan State University in East Lansing. I want to get to, in a moment here, this myth that homeless people do not work, a myth that still dominates public opinion as we talk about the growing number of houseless, homeless folk in this country in Trump 2.0, who once again are laboring without shelter. But I want to ask you just two quick questions finally about these encampments that we see, again, exponentially growing across the country, even as the Supreme Court has ruled that cities and states can move as they will on these encampments. Here's my question, actually a two-part question right quick, which I don't typically do, but I want to just manage my time here. What about the fact that these encampments contribute to increases in crime and drug abuse and communicable diseases, et cetera, and more to the point, what happens to everyday people when governments, as they are disbanding these encampments, Professor Martinez? Is your mute button on? I can't hear you. So, Professor Martinez, I think you're still there, but maybe you pushed the wrong button. Let's figure this out. Again, our guest is Professor Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, who is with Michigan State University in the Urban and Regional Planning Department. And we've been talking for the better part of this hour about the numbers that suggest that houselessness, that homelessness is growing all across this country. I've repeated a few times that we saw these numbers go up dramatically, exponentially during the Reagan era. And here we are just 100 days plus into the Trump era, and we see the same thing happening. These numbers are rising in ways that cannot be ignored. The last count we have, again, is about 770,000 people homeless on any given night right now in this country. We know that is a significant undercount, but that's the number. We know that black people are overrepresented at 32% in the number of homeless, I should say, in this country. We know the Latin number is growing faster than the other number, and we know that black men, once again, are still the face of homelessness in this country. So here's some data right quick, and we'll try to get her back on to wrap this conversation. But here's where I wanted to go beyond those questions about encampments. When it comes to this issue, this myth, in fact, that homeless people do not work, an opinion that all the data suggests still dominates public opinion. The reality is that for millions of fellow citizens, a job is no longer enough to afford housing. I read a comment from one of our listeners earlier in this hour who's concerned about others but concerned about herself in this particular moment because the struggle is real. And more everyday people, working people, find themselves living in their cars, find themselves homeless. And so here's some data. In 2021, a study came out from the Becker-Friedman Institute for Economics at the University of Chicago, and their study found that 53%, listen to this, 53% of homeless shelter residents are in fact employed. That's a big number. 53% of folk in shelters are employed. And the study found that just over 40% of unsheltered homeless people are employed. Over 40%, or right at 40% of unsheltered homeless people are employed. So much for this notion that people who are unhoused or homeless don't work. That's not what this study out of the University of Chicago found a few years ago. You're listening to Tavis, Smiley, more of our conversation with Professor Deyanira Nevárez Martínez, I hope, when we come forward. Stay tuned.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? You may be able to reduce your risk by managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, being physically active, eating healthy, and exercising your mind. To learn more about AD, the importance of early diagnosis and intervention, and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
Barbecue season is back. Hey, it's Ellen.
And this is Sarah Beth.
And a little thing we love about the Chick-fil-A Smokehouse Barbecue Bacon Sandwich is that zesty barbecue sauce. I love that it was a little sweet, a little tangy, and with the mac and cheese,
I feel like I tasted the brown sugar bacon first. It was the absolute best combination. Pro tip, 3 sandwiches are always better than 1.
Order the Smokehouse Barbecue Bacon Sandwich and a Coca-Cola on the Chick-fil-A app for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Professor Martinez, this is our lightning round. I've got 4 minutes left, and I got 4 questions. Let's do 60 seconds on each. First, these encampments, many people believe they contribute to increases in crime, drug abuse, communicable diseases. What say you?
Yeah, so the real encampments aren't the issue. They are an outcome of a problem that we're having. And so while there may be, increased, some associations between an encampment and maybe increased visibility of crime, drug abuse, and communicable diseases, the real issue is that the lack of this is being caused by the lack of stable housing and supportive services for the community. And so when we disrupt encampments as well, we really disrupt the social cohesion of the encampment, folks who may have had social support in the encampment from other folks, and we end up pushing people into maybe an industrial area that is a lot more harmful, where they'll be potentially exposed to toxins and other environmental risks. And they may be pushed into, in California, for example, into the hills, where you can have an increased exposure and potentially increased risk of wildfires if someone's trying to cook out there or, stay warm. And so really, the issue is that we have a lack of stable housing and lack of support. And the encampments, while these issues are very real concerns, the issue of increased crime and drug abuse and communicable disease, it's really an outcome of these other issues that we need to solve.
Let me try to get 2 more things in right quick here. You mentioned crime. What about law enforcement when it comes to the unhoused? The role of law enforcement?
Yeah, cops really are not the folks who need to be engaging with this population. Being poor is not a crime, and our law enforcement should be out and tackling serious crimes in the community. And we really need social services for folks. We need folks to be able to get into housing. And this is the issue with a lot of this, is that we don't have housing. And so when we have outreach folks going out into the community to, what they're doing is signing people up for waiting lists or, giving them $15 in SNAP benefits, which is great, but that doesn't solve homelessness. That solves hunger. If we sign people up for Medicare, that's great. We need to do that, but that solves a health issue, not homelessness. And the real issue here is that we don't have housing. And so an individual may go through this whole process, at the end of the day, still have to go back into the encampment because there is no housing. They're on a waiting list for it that could be 4 or 5 years long.
I got 60 seconds left. Here's my exit question. I gave the data, shared the data a moment ago, that for millions, a job is just not enough to afford housing. And this myth persists that homeless people don't work. And I think that myth still dominates public opinion. In 60 seconds, your response.
Yes, absolutely. Like I mentioned, the majority of the individuals who are unhoused that I have worked with throughout the last 10 years have had jobs. They are the working homeless. And so the issue here is that wages have not kept up with the rents. And so it is very difficult to have, I've actually worked with folks who have 2 jobs, but having a job at McDonald's and a job at Jack in the Box does not pay a rent in Southern California. And if you've been unhoused for a while, that has affected your credit, which is going to be another barrier. That has also, and when you're trying to get into a new place and you have to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, and then a deposit, and then have to prove that you can get a certain percentage above what the monthly rent is, that is a huge hurdle for folks. And so what we really need is this housing first approach where we get people into housing and then work on all of these other issues. We need to increase the minimum wage. People need living wages so that they can actually pay for rent and have some dignified housing. And we really need to, and I know that this might be a bit of a bad word, especially in our society, we need to increase public housing. We have one very, very successful public housing model in the US, and that is our mortgage interest deduction, and that we use public money to help people with their housing. But the only folks who are eligible for that are homeowners, and so we need to increase those types of programs for everyone.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry I'm out of time, but I hear you loud and clear. Those are amazing suggestions, and one we ought to take seriously. Housing first, a living wage, et cetera, et cetera. The numbers are rising. It's a subject we cannot ignore. I thank Professor Deyanira Nevárez Martínez for this hour. More of Tavis, Smiley, when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Jury selection begins in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial in Manhattan, New York. People are weighing in on if they'd be a fair juror in this case.
I wouldn't want to be, but yeah, I'm pretty fair with decision making.
Oh, you don't want me to be a juror in that jury. He's guilty.
Me? Nah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't do court.
Diddy pleads not guilty and rejected a plea deal. 3 people are dead and 5 injured after a shooting at a Cinco de Mayo party at El Camarón Gigante in Glendale, Arizona. Police suspect multiple shooters but have made no arrests. The Mexican consulate in Phoenix is offering support to those affected. And Beyoncé received a cease and desist from the Las Vegas Sphere over a Cowboy Carter tour visual showing a giant version of herself picking up the venue and playing with it. The Sphere claims it was used without permission. Beyoncé has since replaced the Sphere with the Allegiant Stadium, where she'll close out the tour in July. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org. Is this the time?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. With the Lakers and Clippers out of the NBA playoffs, NBA fans in LA will have to decide on who to root for. The Golden State Warriors might be at the top of the list. Golden State won Game 7 in Houston on Sunday to advance to the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State is at Minnesota Tuesday for Game 1 of a best-of-7 series. After eliminating the Clippers Saturday, the Denver Nuggets are at Oklahoma City tonight for Game 1. In the Eastern Conference, New York is at Boston tonight for Game 1. Indiana has a 1-0 lead over Cleveland, the top seed in the East. Game 2 is Tuesday. Congratulations to Jackson State University baseball coach Omar Johnson. Johnson earned his 600th career win Sunday with Jackson State's 5-0 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Johnson, in his 16th season at Jackson State, has led the HBCU program to 2 SWAC championships and 30 or more wins in 14 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall, alongside every episode of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
my life in the sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine.
That's Roy Ayers, sounding as good as ever.
Sunshine.
Let that ride, Miles. Let it ride. So you guys know how we do this. Every time we have a guest in the studio, we let them pick their walk-on song. Sheléa, who I'll give a formal introduction to, is here. First of all, it's great to see you. So why Roy Ayers as your walk-on?
It just makes me happy.
Yeah.
It's a cloudy day in Los Angeles today. I said, we're going to bring the sunshine today.
I love it. That's good enough. If it makes you happy. And there are songs that do that, aren't there?
Yeah.
As soon as you hear them, you just...
Yep. Just relax, brings good vibes.
Yeah. Let it ride. Let it ride for a second, Miles.
Hey.
Just bees and things and flowers. Just bees and things and flowers.
I'm glad you chose Roy Ayers because there are a number of folk on my list. I was just talking to somebody the other day. Who was it? Eddie Levert.
Okay.
Was here in that chair not long ago. And he and I were talking about my list, and everybody has, every person who loves music, I think, has one of these lists.
Yeah.
A list of the most underrated, underappreciated voices in music.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was saying to him that Walt in the OJs.
Yes.
That Negro can blow.
Yes, he can.
And
yes, he can.
and Walt has never gotten his love. There are a lot of folk on that list of underrated, underappreciated, and not everybody that walks in here says, play some Roy Ayers for me.
Wow.
I'm glad you did that, though.
Oh,
yeah.
Me too.
What a great artist, right? I don't know that Roy ever got his props.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yet he was just, the soundtrack to our lives, like when we wanted to like I said, vibe out, chill. It's just so much light in his music. Yeah.
So I have never talked to anybody, and I've been at this for a while now in my career, my TV and radio career, and every artist I've ever talked to, I mean this sincerely, I've never talked to a single artist who I ask about their influences, black, white, red, brown, or yellow. And the GOAT, Stevie, is not on the list.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, everybody.
Yes.
Everybody I've ever talked to, I say, give me a list of the people you were influenced by.
Yeah.
Everybody says Stevie. Their other names can move around, but everybody has Stevie on their list. In your case, you're not just mentored and influenced by Stevie, but also by Quincy Delight Jones.
Yes.
How did you get in such rarefied air? Stevie and Quincy as your mentors? How did that happen?
I know. Honestly, the short answer is God.
Yeah.
Favor, walking in purpose. Yeah. But I would say if the technical answer would be is that Ricky Minor, but that's another story.
I love Ricky.
Because I met Ricky through Stevie.
Sure.
So I could the short answer would be I was on Take Six's album. And their Grammy-nominated album, singing Someone to Watch Over Me, Stevie being huge fans of theirs.
Oh, yeah.
Heard their record just because he was a fan. Yeah. And
Miles, put that up, Someone to Watch Over Me from Take Six right quick.
Yes.
You want to finish your story, but put that up
Yeah,
right quick.
And so Stevie, just immediately wanted to meet me. He told one of the guys in Take Six, I think it was David Thomas, he said, I want to meet her, and it was this instant connection. So that's Stevie, the Stevie connection with Q. I met Q through Ricky Minor. Ricky Minor was doing a private event at his home. He asked me to sing for, again, instant connection. I ended up being his first vocalist at his jazz club in Dubai. So I lived in Dubai for 2 months. Palazzo Versace Dubai, and me and Q, again, just this instant connection. We ended up traveling the world together later on, touring Montreux Jazz Fest, O2 Arena in London, Paris, Accor Hotel Arena there, and just, and what's so crazy about Q, I miss him so much.
So do I.
I actually sang for his very last birthday at his home. It was, they said, who do you want to sing? And he said Sheléa, and that's something that makes me cry, like really ugly tears, but it also just fills my heart with so much joy that such an iconic person that I just loved ever since I was a child loved me that same way.
Well, it's a beautiful thing for all of us to live in their era. And it's I pinch myself every day thinking about my friendship with Stevie and Q.
Yeah.
But you got to work with him and sing with him, something I and most of us would never be able to say. So it's a beautiful thing. All right, Miles, give me some Take 6. I'm going to, in a half hour, I'm going to squeeze in some Take 6. I've already done Roy Ayers.
There we go.
I'm going to squeeze in some Quincy.
Yeah.
I'm going to squeeze in some Stevie. But most importantly, I'm going to get to her track.
Yes.
Never Give Up on Love.
Yes.
Inspired by the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. We are delighted to have in the studio right now the Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Sheléa. You're listening to her, and I'm glad about it, on Tavis Smiley.
Someone who watch over me. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the world. I know I could always be good.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is Joe Cordell of Cordell & Cordell. Cordell & Cordell is the largest family law firm in the country, with over 35 years of helping clients navigate divorce. That does give us certain advantages, for example, in focus and resources. But being big doesn't mean less personal or less local. Our attorneys live and work in your community, and as neighbors, they understand the challenges your families face. If you're a guy facing divorce, remember, Cordell & Cordell, a partner you can count on.
1455 Frazee, San Diego. CordellCordell.com.
The doctor's office that accidentally mixed up your files has your social security number. The power company that mistakenly cut your service has your payment info. And the hotel that lost your reservation has your passport number. You need LifeLock because your personal info is in endless places that can expose you to identity thieves. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Save up to 40% with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
I don't even know how to step on this. I can't. I feel bad. Just
right.
It's talk radio, but I feel don't you stop that, Miles. I just feel bad even stepping on it. But this is what you get when you put Quincy and Aretha together.
Yes.
This is what you get, and I just love the unconventional. I'll use that word. Tracks that Sheléa is choosing to play in this conversation. I ain't got to hers yet, but just talk to me about what you hear when you hear Quincy and Aretha together on Somewhere.
You know, I hear two geniuses, you know. I don't know if you could say that plural. That's the teacher in me. Is it just two genius?
Yeah.
You know, both at the top of their game, you know, just feeding off of each other. You know, that's particular performance I have not heard. The one that I heard is the studio version. That's the one that I actually included in my PBS special. I think we're going to talk about later on. But as you said, I like to get the rare ones. You know, yes, we know a natural woman, we know Respect, but Somewhere, her version of Somewhere and Quincy's orchestration, and I don't think there's a piece of music just that's better than that. Yeah.
I'm going to pivot in just a second to your Aretha-inspired track called "Never Give Up on Love." But why Aretha for you? What's that Aretha thing about for you? Yeah.
Well, we're both church girls.
That's the right answer.
We grew up as just two little church girls, you know, in church, and I think I looked at her as I think as so many people as the blueprint to always stay true to who you are. Oh, yeah. So Aretha was Aretha. She going to Aretha-fy whatever genre, whatever song,
That's right.
whatever she came across. So you know, when we were at the Grammys and Pavarotti was sick and she had to do Nessun Dorma, she killed it and Aretha-fied it. And you know, I don't think there's a more impactful moment than that. You know, and so I just love how she's always been so unapologetic, and that's kind of how I have been.
This audience knows over the years I have played on both TV and radio. I've played that track a number of times. Like if you never heard her do that stand in for Pavarotti, that Nessun Dorma piece.
Yes.
I mean, she slayed that thing that night at the
Absolutely.
Grammys. And the place, I mean, I love, as much as I love hearing her, I tell people just Google it. It's everywhere online. But just watch the reaction of the audience.
Yes.
All these amazing artists watching her standing at the last minute for Pavarotti.
Yes.
And just slay that thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Just to watch their faces is priceless.
Yes.
But Aretha could sing, to your point, anything, any genre. And to your point, she put her own funk and her own stank on it.
Yes.
And
always.
just kill it, right?
And unapologetic about
Always.
it. It's like I'm going to be unapologetically soulful in whatever I bring.
So for Aretha, it was New Bethel Baptist. And your church was?
My little church in Bakersfield, California was Southside SDA Church on 3rd and L.
There you go. Got it. Ain't nothing like the chocolate church. Ain't nothing like the chocolate church. So you got to shout that out. Yeah. All right. So that was Aretha and Quincy with Somewhere. Now I want you to hear Sheléa's Aretha-inspired piece on her new track. It's called "Never Give Up on Love," and see if you can't feel and hear the Aretha inspiration.
Come on now.
My mama said you better watch and learn. There ain't nothing worth having in this world if it comes easy. Don't you stop until your battle's won. Never throw in the towel, 'cause you just begun. You can have anything you want, but it won't come easy. Ooh, sometimes life just don't go according to your plan. Ain't much you can do, but just do what you can. When you give it your all and you don't understand, just remember what my mama said. Never give up. Never give up on love. Never give up. Never give up, no. Never give up. Never give up on love. Never give up. Never give up, no. You can have all that you want, so never, ever, ever give up on the.
Can I just shout out whoever is playing that Hammond? Let it ride, Miles. Whoever's playing that Hammond B3. Who is playing that Hammond B3?
That is the multi-Grammy award-winning Corey Henry.
Corey Henry is working that B3.
Yes, he is.
Turn it up, Miles. Turn it up. Turn it up.
Sometimes life just don't go according to your plan. There ain't much you can do, but just do what you can. When you give it your all and you don't understand, just remember what my mama said.
See, when you grew up in a Pentecostal church like I did, you have respect for the Hammond B3, right?
Yes.
Tell me about the track, Sheléa.
Yes. So my dear friend and collaborator, Davey Nathan, and I, we wrote this song together, produced it together. And, you know, we wanted those elements that organ is just it's soul stirring. You know, it always brings it. And yes, we're talking about love and romantic love, but I just wanted that feeling, you know, because I felt like it takes people to that place. And I think we all want that love, and that love comes from a deep place. Yeah. So that was the thought process behind it.
I described it as Aretha-inspired. Clearly it is, but unpack that phrase for me as you see it.
You know, when I was creating, you know, the set list for the Aretha tribute show that I debuted at the Royal Albert Hall in London, I was going through all of the iconic songs, Chain of Fools, and you know, just all of those amazing songs, Dr. Feelgood, and I was like, there is such a vacancy for that kind of space, you know, of just, again, that unapologetic soulfulness. I just have not really felt that. And so I said, I want to make a record that Aretha might make today, you know, if she were still here. And that was kind of our little template that we used, and said, okay, it fits in this. And we also wanted it to be joyful as well. And so I'm really happy with what we have
You should
created.
Be. I heard that thing a couple of days ago in preparation for you coming on. I played it over and over
makes me so
and
happy.
over.
Thank you. You have no idea.
Your voice, I mean, it has all the right elements, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the band is tight.
Yes.
And Corey's working that B3, as I said.
Yes, he is.
Your vocals are as strong as ever. And the lyrics.
I'm
a lyricist, right?
Yeah.
You put all that together, and it sounds good. It sounds extremely good. So talk to me. You mentioned the PBS thing.
Yes.
It's called Aretha with Sheléa and the Pacific Symphony, televised on PBS stations all across the country starting May the 30th. Tell me about the special.
Yes. As I said, it debuted at the Royal Albert Hall in London in 2022. I had curated this show with Jules Buckley, who I met through Q. It's crazy how things are so connected.
He has a big world.
Yes, he does.
He had a huge world.
Yes.
I said all the time, I said, Q, you have done everything with everybody at least twice.
Yeah.
And I've traveled the world with Prince. I miss him dearly. I've traveled the world with Prince, with Q, and a lot of other people, artists, James Taylor, friends of mine. I've traveled the world with.
Incredible.
But I've never been anywhere with anybody like Quincy, because everywhere he goes, he has friends.
Yes.
And everywhere he goes, they roll out the red carpet for this guy.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised that you're connecting to all these people through his world. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what's crazy is he speaks the language
everywhere.
Everywhere he goes.
Well, you know, his edict, I've said this many times. Q told me many, many times, and I'm sure he told Sheléa and all of his friends. He said, there are three things you do, Tavis, everywhere you go. Everywhere you go in the world, do three things. Because I asked him one day, how did you become a citizen of the world?
Yes.
He said, that's a great question, T. I said, no, seriously, how did you become a citizen of the world? He said, three things I do everywhere I go. I want you to do it. I said, okay. He said, learn a few words in their language, eat their food, and listen to their music.
That's it.
And you will become a citizen of the world.
That is so
Learn
true.
a few words in their language.
That's right.
Listen to their music, eat their food, and you become a citizen of the world. So I'm sure you've heard that as well.
Yes.
So to your point, everywhere he went, he could speak a little language.
He did. He did.
He
I watched him
yeah.
do it. I watched him do it. It was incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, so Jules Buckley, who I met through Q when we were doing our touring of Europe, and we just had, again, this amazing connection. We said, let's do something together. We debuted it. It went crazy. BBC4, it was just an incredible success, sold out in I think 6 to 8 hours, they said. And so I started touring it around Europe. And I finally said, well, you know, Aretha was an American artist. I got to bring this show to America. And so I have had a long-standing relationship with PBS. And so this will be my 10th PBS special, actually.
Is it 10?
10. This will be my 10. Not my own personal one, but I've been on 10
10 of them.
PBS
Yeah.
specials. Yeah. 3 of them being my own. And so Mara Daly, who I love dearly, I had pitched her this idea, and I had done another PBS special called The New Divas Live in Vienna about a year before, and it was kind of hard to get all the girls together at one point, and so she said, you know what, I've got this date with Pacific Symphony, you know, I think we should do your Aretha show here, and we did, and Ricky Minor again, and just such an angel in my life, was the music director, conductor, and we just had the most amazing time.
What is the difference to your mind of Aretha or doing Aretha's music with, because she did both obviously in her career, with a symphony and without? But when you combine her stuff with a symphony, you get what?
Ooh, I love that. For me, you know, I'm going to say this. I read an article that said they thought that the strings took away from the soulfulness. So I'm not saying that was that particular person's opinion, and that was what they felt. For me, strings just make everything bigger.
I think it enhances it.
It enhances
That's
it. It
my view,
shows the chords.
Sure.
You know, it shows the movement. And what I really love about our show, that I think is very unique and compared to other shows, is that it really shows Aretha in the fullness of all that she was. Before she had the hits, they were calling her no-hit Aretha.
That's right.
And she was singing American songbook standards. I will never forget the first time I heard her sing Skylark. It stopped me in my tracks because she was singing so beautiful and just so light. But at the very end, honey, she gonna make you feel that Aretha moment.
That's it.
And she's wailing on this, you know, this orchestra. But when she hits that Skylark, when it changes keys and she hits that high A flat, it's incredible. And so we have that in the set list. You know, we start the show with Precious Memories from Amazing Grace, which was her greatest selling album. That's what I grew up
Don't
on.
get me started here. This audience knows it's one of my top 5 albums of all time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and so to me, her music, a lot of the music really does lend itself to have an orchestra. And it was in the original recordings also somewhere, which it's so orchestral. Then it goes into this jazz trio, and she's like playing jazz piano on it. And so because I play piano, I'm able to really show what she was doing, you know, and show she wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just Natural Woman and Respect, although we love those anthems. She was Aretha the musician, Aretha the jazz singer, you know, Aretha the gospel singer. As one of my favorite quotes of Sarah Vaughan, she says, I'm not a jazz singer, I'm not a pop singer, I'm not a gospel singer, I'm a singer. And that's what Aretha was, just simply a singer.
And that she was. That reminds you of the documentary. Amazing. You saw the documentary, right? Amazing.
You know I did.
And her dad says, Aretha is just a stone cold singer. She's just a stone cold singer. That's what she is.
That's it.
All right, I got a minute to go. Pick a Stevie track. Put you on the spot. Any Stevie track.
Oh, my goodness.
I said I was going to get him in. We got to hear some Stevie.
Do I do?
Do I do, Miles? Give me some Do I do. And as Miles cues that up, and we hear some Do I do, I want to thank Sheléa for coming in studio. Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter. The new track, inspired by Aretha, is called Never Give Up on Love. Aretha with Sheléa and the Pacific Symphony will be televised on PBS stations all across America. Check your local listings, as they say, starting May the 30th. There's Stevie. Sheléa, I got to run. Love you. Good to have you in studio. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
It gets weak when you stand in the crowd. Your love talks to me so loud. Girl, do I do what you do when I do? My love
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Jury selection begins in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial in Manhattan, New York. People are weighing in on if they'd be a fair juror in this case.
I wouldn't want to be, but yeah, I'm pretty fair with decision making.
Oh, you don't want me to be a juror and that juror, he's guilty.
Me? Nah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't do court.
Diddy pleads not guilty and rejected a plea deal. 3 people are dead and 5 injured after a shooting at a Cinco de Mayo party at El Camarón Gigante in Glendale, Arizona. Police suspect multiple shooters but have made no arrests. The Mexican consulate in Phoenix is offering support to those affected. And Beyoncé received a cease and desist from the Las Vegas Sphere over a Cowboy Carter tour visual showing a giant version of herself picking up the venue and playing with it. The Sphere claims it was used without permission. Beyoncé has since replaced the Sphere with the Allegiant Stadium, where she'll close out the tour in July. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
With the Lakers and Clippers out of the NBA playoffs, NBA fans in LA will have to decide on who to root for. The Golden State Warriors might be at the top of the list. Golden State won Game 7 in Houston on Sunday to advance to the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State is at Minnesota Tuesday for Game 1 of a best-of-7 series. After eliminating the Clippers Saturday, the Denver Nuggets are at Oklahoma City tonight for Game 1. In the Eastern Conference, New York is at Boston tonight for Game 1. Indiana has a 1-0 lead over Cleveland, the top seed in the East. Game 2 is Tuesday. Congratulations to Jackson State University baseball coach Omar Johnson. Johnson earned his 600th career win Sunday with Jackson State's 5-0 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Johnson, in his 16th season at Jackson State, has led the HBCU program to 2 SWAC championships and 30 or more wins in 14 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Kern Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. D.A. Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
You are indeed. I'm glad about it. We close our show today, this last half hour, in conversation with David Miliband. Pleased to have him back on this program, President and CEO of the International Rescue Committee, to give us an update on the civil war in Sudan and other humanitarian hotspots. David Miliband, good to have you back, sir. How are you today?
Tavis, thank you very much for inviting me back on your show. It's really good to hear your voice.
It's great to hear yours, and I thank you for the time. Let me just start with a couple of broad questions, and we'll narrow it as we move through this half hour of conversation. But it feels like to me, in the era of Trump 2.0, and I don't mean to make you political, but you'll take my point. Of course, you were political because you are a former British Foreign Secretary, so that's you're no stranger to politics. But again, not to make you political in this sense, but I am curious as to whether or not you feel the way I feel, which is that in the era of Trump 2.0, we have been distracted, and that's the kindest word I can come up with, the most charitable word, the most generous word. We've been distracted by so many other things. I don't know that we have our eye on the ball with regard to these civil wars and other humanitarian hotspots around the globe. I mean, we talk about Gaza here and there, but even that story, even with the breaking news out of Israel today, that they're going to, they're going to continue pressing forward and take over this entire area. That's big news, but somehow that these stories about these hotspots get lost in the era of Donald Trump being distracted again. Somebody would call them WMDs, weapons of mass distraction. And so I don't know that we're paying attention in the way that we should. And we don't, as Americans, as you know, pay attention to international issues as much as anybody else does in the world anyway. We're kind of stuck in our own silo in that way. But what say you about all of that?
Well, I think you're making an important point, Tavis. It's unfortunately not new that faraway places get the attention squeezed. Who was it who said that all politics is local?
Yes.
I'm not trying to be political, but it was Tip O'Neill who said that all politics is local, the former speaker. And of course, this is a country, a continent surrounded by two oceans. You're a long way from some of the hotspots. And that distance, I think, is sometimes, has long time been reflected in the news coverage. Now, you're also right. You've got a lot going on here. 147 executive orders in the first 3 months means there's plenty to discuss even before you're into the tweets and the rest of it. Now, I think that the point I want to make to your listeners is that the world hasn't stopped turning just because of the convulsions that are going on here in the United States. I'm lucky to be leading an international humanitarian organization that is headquartered in New York, but we're a global organization, and our job is to keep our eye fixed on the places that are in humanitarian crisis. And it's a very sad thing that they don't get the attention they deserve, and in this case, it is a matter of life and death. You mentioned Sudan, and just to pause on that for a moment, it's a country in the northeast of Africa. It's geographically in a very significant point. It's right there, Port Sudan onto the Red Sea. It's geographically significant, it's politically significant, and it's now the subject of the world's largest ever humanitarian disaster. And I just want to put it in perspective for you. The population of Sudan, 45 million or so. Of that population, about 9 million have been displaced from their homes, so they're homeless, including the depopulation of the capital, Khartoum. About 3 million have crossed into neighboring states like South Sudan, Chad, Egypt. You've got to be very, very desperate if you're fleeing to South Sudan from Sudan. But also, I think this is where really our humanity is challenged. This is a war that's being sponsored from outside, not by the United States or China or Russia, but by regional powers. And the pain is being felt by local people there. So their needs are great. And it's precisely at this time that it's most dangerous that the world is turning attention away. And so to your point about not being too political, what I would say is it's about being human, not just being political. We're turning our attention away from humanitarian hotspots when there are more of them with more people in need. And that's what troubles me on this Monday.
Yeah. What does, no naivete here, but I want you to take this as you will, David Miliband. What do the growing number of these humanitarian hotspots around the globe, Sudan, et cetera, what do these humanitarian hotspots say, to your point, about our individual and collective humanity or the lack thereof?
Well, that is a very big question. I mean, we're talking 9 days after the funeral of the Pope. The Pope uttered this expression 12 years ago. He visited Lampedusa, which is the island off Italy, where migrants from the Middle East were dying as they tried to cross to Italy. And he said the world is suffering from the globalization of indifference. And in a way, that's one answer to your point. He was saying the world's becoming callous, the world's becoming insensate to the loss of humanity. I think there's something else going on, though, and I wonder whether you agree. I actually think there's plenty of compassion to go around. What people don't know is whether they can turn their compassion into action. And I wonder whether, in an age when we know more about Sudan than we would have known 30 or 50 or 70 years ago, even from Gaza, there's more coverage of what's going on there. Even when journalism is limited, there's more coming out through what people are capturing on their own phones. We know more about Sudan. We know more about Myanmar. Even Myanmar, which is a very difficult place, formerly called Burma, very hard place to get information out of. We know more. And I think there's quite a lot of compassion. What I think is missing is a sense of, well, what could actually make a difference? And part of our job as an international humanitarian organization is to say, hang on, well, there's a lot that could make a difference. Even if you can't change the politics, you can save lives. And that's the job of a humanitarian organization.
No, you asked a question a moment ago what I thought about this. I assume that wasn't rhetorical. Let me just tell you right now my initial thought about this, and I want to unpack this more with you when we come forward. First of all, I love the phrase from the Pope about the globalization of indifference. And the minute you offered that quote from the Pope, the globalization of indifference, my mind went to Martin King. Dr. King called for a revolution of values. The only way you deal with the globalization, to my mind, of indifference is to have a revolution of values. We'll talk about that part when we come forward. But I take the question, how do you turn that compassion into action? My read and my sense is that in an era of increasing authoritarianism, not just in this country, but indeed the globe over. I think one of the consequences, David Miliband, of authoritarianism is that people feel like they have less agency across the board, not just on the issue that we're talking about, but when you have creeping authoritarianism, I think that leads people to feel like they have less agency writ large. Let's talk about that and a great deal more when we come forward with David Miliband, who is the president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee. I'm delighted to have him right now on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and David Miliband, who is the president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee, former British Foreign Secretary. So you asked, and I answered, my sense is that, again, authoritarianism tends to lend itself to people feeling like they have less agency on pretty much everything. What say you, Mr. Miliband?
Well, I think the part of the job of organizations like ours is to make practical the values that people have. So let me just give you a very simple example of that. I can tell you that there are 45 million acutely malnourished under 5-year-old kids in the world today, and you can be horrified. And you can be compassionate. If I tell you that we, the International Rescue Committee, have shown through our aid workers how to deliver malnutrition treatment in communities that are riven by war, and how to have a 92% recovery rate for the kids who get the benefit of the treatment that we offer, you might then say to me, well, how much is it going to cost? And then I'll tell you, well, for about $150 to $200 for a whole course of treatment that lasts between 4 and 6 weeks, I can deliver that through IRC teams around the world, you might then say to me, well, hang on, there's me and 10 friends who want to pay $150 each. We'll raise $1,500 and we'll help 10 kids. So I think that the lesson of this, it's not exactly compassion fatigue, but it's values. What did you say? A values revolution.
A revolution of values,
Let's have the revolution of values that Dr. King talked about by making it easier to put those values into practice. And that's where my job, our job at the International Rescue Committee, is to bridge the gap between the values that people hold and the problems that we face globally as well as locally. If I tell you that for $4, we can immunize a kid in East Africa, we have immunized kids in East Africa, and we want to immunize more, you'd then say, well, hang on, that's a good investment for us as well as for them, because surely that means that their lives will be free of disease, certain diseases, but it also nips in the bud the potential for health threats to metastasize and spread. And I'd say, yeah, this is in your interest as well as according to your values. Mm-hmm. So I'm all about let's turn our values into real change on the ground. And I have the privilege of leading an organization that does research on impact as well as delivering services. We can tell you what works in a range of areas. That's how I approach your question.
Yep. In our remaining moments with David Miliband, I want to circle back to the point he made a moment ago, quoting the Pope, the late Pope now, about the globalization of indifference. I'm all for King and the revolution of values, no question about needing that. I'm all for turning compassion into action. I love the example that you gave, but we are living in a world right now where, again, around the globe, there are elected leaders who are advancing an agenda of rugged individualism that that the other guy doesn't matter. It's save oneself, and I don't know what David Miliband thinks about how we convince people in this moment where there may be some compassion fatigue. I don't know. How do you convince people to turn that compassion into action when we have, again, leaders in this country and indeed around the globe who are only concerned about self, and that's the message they are advancing with the bully pulpits that they have and that they stand on? Our remaining moments with David Miliband when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks for calling Discover. This is Nia.
Hi, Nia. It's Jennifer. Did you know that Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, I work here.
Okay. I was just double checking. Get it?
Because Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Oh, you get me, Nia.
You could say that I double get you.
I guess we've taken it too far.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
The following is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways. Airfare not included. See FVGradio.com for complete details. If you want a 100% complimentary stay at a luxury resort in Cancun, airfare not included, then Family Vacation Getaways is your ticket to paradise. See website for complete details. We're giving away 5 days and 4 nights to the first 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You're also eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $498. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and get your complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $498. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431, and give us your answer. Proceeding is not sponsored by this station or its affiliates.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and David Miliband for the next 4 minutes before we wrap today's program. So, David, tell me what you've learned about how, in fact, you gave a great example of a frame in which we can, in fact, turn our compassion into action. What have you learned about how you convince people to do that, particularly in an era where we have leaders who are preaching this message of self first?
I think we have to say, look, charity does begin at home, but charity doesn't end at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a common sense position. We know that there are enormous needs across the United States, and we don't deny them. You don't want to get in a position where you're denying those needs. That would be contrary to the interests, never mind the values, of you and the people listening to this program. But let's speak to the common sense point that there are needs beyond these borders, and it's in our moral interest as well as in our strategic interest to address those problems. That's how I think you set the stage for then saying, and by the way, there are practical things that you can do. If you want to know how to make a difference, go and visit, in our case, speaking for the International Rescue Committee, rescue.org. That's where we show the difference that we can make and how we make a difference. But I think we have to acknowledge reality. There is a domestic reality. Don't deny it. When I say that we've got to look at problems far away, I'm not denying the problems that exist here. What I'm saying is let's keep part of our brain the problems that are far away, not just problems that are close by.
Yeah. So you know as well as I do, you know more than I do, this is the work that you do, that Israel has okayed plans to intensify their military operations in Gaza, so that crisis is going to get far worse in the days ahead. What say you?
Well, obviously, we're very concerned about this because we have teams on the ground. They're made up of people who are Gazan residents. They're working for us. When I spoke to them last, they had lost their own houses. So this is very personal to us. We also have partner organizations that are working there. And during the period of the ceasefire, the 6 weeks of the ceasefire, we were able to make strides forward. Obviously, a lot of that is being lost. And there is just palpable fear for the future right across the Gaza Strip. So these are dangerous times for the people who work for us and the people that we serve.
Yeah. Bibi Netanyahu has vowed a powerful, that's his word, a powerful Israeli operation in Gaza, as ministers in Israel have okayed a plan to capture the entire enclave. The entire enclave. Gaza, as you may know, is now under its longest blockade of humanitarian aid since the war began, as Israel's total ban on the entry of all goods, including food and fuel and medical supplies, enters its third month. That cannot be helpful, David Miliband, that this blockade of humanitarian aid, I mean, you're talking about turning compassion into action, even if you wanted to. They won't let you do it in Gaza right about now.
Well, you're right to raise it. There is a legal right as well as a moral right for people to access aid and for aid workers to go about their business. Our repeated call in the interest of 2 million citizens of Gaza, innocent people who are trying to go about their lives, but also in the interest of the hostages who've been taken. I
was hoping that phone line was going to get straightened out, but I could hear a little bit of what he was saying. You started by saying, Tavis, you're right to raise the issue. Mr. Miliband, your phone kind of went crazy on us there at the end. But I thank you for being on this program today. I'm glad the phone didn't go crazy until the very last few seconds there. But thank you for your insights. More importantly, thank you for the work and the witness that you and all those alongside you do at the International Rescue Committee. But I was making the point that even if you wanted to turn your compassion into action right now with regard to those kind of issues, Israel's making it a little difficult to do. I digress on that for now because I'm out of time. We thank all of our guests on this program today, including David Miliband. Just like that, 3 hours gone, but back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley, and as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Jury selection begins in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial in Manhattan, New York. People are weighing in on if they'd be a fair juror in this case.
I wouldn't want to be, but yeah, I'm pretty fair with decision making.
Oh, you don't want me to